Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of 2 autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 41, preparing for an interview as an autistic person.
The world is not built for autistic people.
No, it is not. But there are people that are prepared to assist and help in order to make the world a somewhat better place.
Are there, though?
I'm here.
This is true. Finding meaningful or gainful employment is hard. It's super hard for autistic people. There was a 2012 Canadian survey on disability, because apparently 2012 is as far, but that's how far back I had to go to find this. We're just not up to date. Canada, do better. Only 14% of autistic adults were employed. 14%. While the general population was at 93%.
I have no comeback for that statistic.
No.
So sorry.
So we've known that this has been a significant issue for over a decade. Why?
Because I believe that the government does not invest in proactive approaches. They invest in reactive approaches. Unlike the UK and Australia, who are far more proactive in everything that they do, we are lagging. Our skills are way, way behind as a country, as a government.
So what can we do? We need to find workarounds, basically. That's what we need to do. In order to do that, I think we need to understand why interviews are challenging, and then we can talk about some strategies to make them less challenging.
Okay. All right. You stick with your list. Let's do this.
All right.
And I'm going to jump in here and there because I have my list, but I don't think you're kind of going to agree with some of the things.
We shall see.
But let's see how we can tease the benefit out of both of them.
Okay. So we'll talk about why it's hard, and then we'll talk about the strategies. So stay tuned for the strategies. And if you haven't done so already, please consider giving this a like and subscribing. It's free and it really helps us out, and we would really appreciate it. Okay. So the first thing that I have, the reason why interviewing is hard, is because of discrimination and stigma. When people don't understand something, they make assumptions based on the limited information that they have. And potential employers may be going into the interview process with some ableist beliefs.
Which then I would say that they are not good interviewers. They are not skilled at their job of interviewing. A skilled interviewer would take a holistic approach and look at what the candidate has, what skill set that this candidate is able to bring to the workforce.
That might be true, but that is outside of our control. Who is interviewing you for a position is outside of your control. So we can't do anything about that.
No, you can't, but you can prepare for it. So that's going to be part of our strategies.
We talk all about autistic stereotypes in episode 19, so and the harm that they can cause. So I won't talk about it here, but I'll put a link to it. As things are today, employers are often stuck thinking that the autistic person's traits are going to make other employees feel uncomfortable, that they're not going to be a good fit for the team, that they're going to have lower performance because they're just not as productive, or they're too slow, or that they're more likely to miss work and it's going to cost the company too much to implement accommodations, or even that autistic individuals will make the workplace unsafe.
Well, those are all myths, and therefore to me, in you describing that, it says the aspect of challenges that you're describing here is now based on the onus is on the employer, not on the employee. They have to do their due diligence on understanding what an autistic person brings to the table.
Who's going to make them do that?
Therefore, it goes back to my first statement, is that our government is reactive and not proactive.
But how is the government going to step in and say to this company, you need to be more inclusive?
Well, there are a lot of, for certification programs for employers, I think it should be part of their certification programs when they go about hiring employees. I think it should be necessary.
When you start implementing those kinds of demands on an employer, you are going to get pushback. People don't want to be told how to run their companies.
Okay. So then provide them initiatives that if they have a certain amount of people with visible or invisible disabilities that are part of their workforce, then they are provided initiatives in order to do so.
Okay. This particular podcast is not going to be encompassing the how to fix the workplace environment for autistic people. This is really about how to get through the interview process.
Yes, we've gone off on our tangent.
We did.
So we're reeling back in.
Yes.
We do that often, so do forgive us.
So the interview process itself is also problematic. So you have your interviewer who probably has some ableist ideas, which is difficult enough, but the process of interviewing itself is also problematic. Social communication. Difficulties with social communication is one of the defining characteristics in diagnosing autism.
Mm-hmm. It is a communication disorder, correct?
So, disorder. I'm not disordered. I'm disabled, but I don't feel like I have a disorder. I think that's a terrible word. I think that needs to be changed. Difficulty with nonverbal cues. Interpreting facial expressions, body language, and tone. Those things can be difficult, and they're necessary in the interview process.
Yes, it is.
There's also the challenges with small talk. So there's often an element of conversational exchange that has the expectation of this sort of social fluidity.
Okay.
So even when you go in and you meet the person and maybe you shake hands, I don't know, it's been a long time since I did an interview, and sometimes they give you offhanded comments like, oh, did you see this sports game or something? I hate sports, but whatever the game was, or how was your weekend? And neurotypical people do that as a way to relax the person coming in.
Yeah.
So they think that that's breaking the ice. And for autistic people, it's the opposite. It's completely the opposite of that.
Okay.
So it's not helpful in any way. Because many of us are going to just find it stupid and uncomfortable. I've come in here on a mission. My mission is to do this interview. And now you want to talk about the hockey game? That's got nothing to do with what we're doing right now.
I think this is an example of when we spoke about the soft skills in our previous episode, right? In looking and the requirements of, being able to work in a job.
Sure. When you are focused on something, all of this other stuff feels unnecessary and can be very painful to have to go through.
So our job right now is to encompass all of those unnecessary things into step-by-step guide in helping you prepare the unnecessary things for the job.
Those are some strategies.
Yeah.
So let me go through the rest of the problems.
Okay.
Eye contact. Autistic individuals often have trouble with eye contact, and that's not always making eye contact. Sometimes that's too much eye contact because I'm focused on eye contact and I've forgotten to look away. So it takes effort for a lot of autistic people to maintain the correct amount of eye contact. It makes neurotypical people think you're untrustworthy if you look away too often. or very uncomfortable if you gaze intently. So there has to be that middle ground, which is sometimes very difficult. Then there's the understanding and interpreting of the questions that are being asked. Lots of autistic people are very articulate. But you ask a question, and we're trying to figure out exactly what you mean, because we want to answer that accurately. Ambiguity is painful. It's physically painful. I'm always looking for the correct answer. So asking a question with no correct answer or many correct answers can cause me to short circuit because I don't know which one you want. We can also be too literal in our interpretation of the question.
Mm-hmm.
We might not know how much detail to give to answer the question, especially if it's a technical question. Open-ended questions, terrible. Tell me about a time that you managed conflict resolution. Are we doing a play-by-play? Like what autistic brains have difficulty picking out what would be relevant to the neurotypical person. Or we might not be able to specifically recall a particular situation in that moment because it's very stressful.
Yep. And I'd like to just let you know that you're not alone on this. Anybody preparing for a job, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical, find this situation very, very stressful. So you're not alone.
Sometimes processing can take a while, so having to answer quickly can also be problematic. Then we have sensory issues on top of all of that. So trying to focus and respond in an environment where you're being bombarded with sensory input is impossible. That's impossible. Being sensitive to sound doesn't only mean loud noises. It could be the machine hum in the background, like the water cooler. I'd never own one. No, it hums all the time. And then it's not even noticeable to the neurotypical person. So they don't hear these things. And then they become desensitized to it. They don't even notice that it's happening anymore. But for autistic individuals, the sound can become more pronounced over time and not reduced. So you walk in and you hear it, and then over the course of the interview, it's all you can hear is this background noise. And it could be the buzzing of the light. It could be anything. The lighting itself could cause issues. The fluorescent lighting could be terrible, just bothering. So what if it's not a scent-free environment? Now I can still taste the perfume from the receptionist when I'm into the interview and I can't get rid of it. I was in a lecture once, and the professor who was speaking, who I really liked and was a very good speaker, had a string of saliva connecting his top lip and his lower lip while he was speaking. And I could not for the life of me hear anything that man said for the entire lecture because I was fixated on the spittle that was happening every time he opened his mouth. I missed the lecture. I missed the lecture entirely.
So your hyperfocus went
It was
into
like
hyperdrive.
It was like a magical level of viscosity that it never broke. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop fixating on it.
You were mesmerized at this.
I was disgusted and fascinated at the same time.
Okay.
Then you have that regular amount of stress going into an interview, wanting to do well in the interview, stress and anxiety. I know that it's stressful for anyone, but many autistic individuals struggle daily with anxiety. So this is more on top of our regular level.
Mm-hmm.
And then anxiety can exacerbate all of your autistic traits. So it makes all your sensory issues more pronounced that day.
It does. And that it does for everybody. So I'm just kind of letting people know you're not alone
Sure,
in this
but
process.
not everybody has the sensory issues like autistic people have. So the water cooler might be terrible on a good day, and now it's catastrophic on a stressful day. Right? That's the difference. It's the intensity of the thing. So yes, neurotypical people experience stress, but they're not going to experience the intensity of it that autistic people are experiencing.
So how do we overcome all of this? Or how do we manage?
Okay. The first strategy I have is that you do not need to divulge your diagnosis to your potential employer.
Now, it's funny that you say that, because all of the research that I have done, the very first tip is let your interviewer know that you are on the spectrum.
Okay, I'm going to give you a real world example of why that's stupid. I was in a webinar about job employment for autistic people because my oldest son, Alex, level 1, he will fairly shortly be going out into the world and trying to get a job. And I was just trying to give myself as much information as I could to support him in that process. So there was a webinar, and it was all about employment for autistic individuals, and it was hosted by, I don't know, remembering people is hard, but I think it was an employment lawyer and then another person, and they were both neurotypical, and they just kept saying that. They said, well, you know, your employer can't discriminate based on disability, and you should let them know right away so you can get accommodations because you're entitled to those accommodations. And there were at least 100 people in this webinar, and every single person that spoke and asked questions said, my child or myself, I cannot get a job when I say that I am autistic.
So the evidence, the real world evidence, is contradictory to what is being provided to you as a strategy.
Yes, it doesn't work. I'm going to say don't do it unless you are absolutely sure that your employer is going to embrace diversity and equity and inclusion, all the things. Unless you're sure of that, I wouldn't do it, because people do discriminate. And they might have internalized ableism. They might not even know that they have that.
Okay.
But it is not going to help you get that job.
I agree with you on some point. So when people do research, this is the number one tip that comes up.
Lies.
So here we are contradicting that, and we're providing you information that supports this contradiction.
Yeah, don't do it. Just don't do it. And I know that sounds wrong, because it is wrong, because we shouldn't have discrimination, but that's the world we live in.
That is correct.
And with only 14% of autistic people being employed, I don't know how different that number is now, it's not working.
No, it is not working. So things need to change, but it needs to change on a fundamental level.
So
not in our control.
But for right now, in the world we live in, we need some practical strategies that are actually going to work. So one of those strategies is practice.
That, after listening to your list of
problems.
I was trying to be polite.
No, just let it out.
Problems. I realized that it doesn't matter all of the strategies that I have here, because all of these strategies that I have that need to be implemented can only be done one way, and that's through practice. That's it. You need to practice. And I'm sorry to say, if that means going and applying for jobs that you are seriously not considering to gain the practice for interview skills, that is the way I would look at it.
That is a valid strategy. This is actually a strategy that I have.
That would be the only strategy I would offer anybody right now.
There are other things you can do besides actually doing the interview. You can practice before you get to the interview. So you can Google potential interview questions specific to the job or the field that you're interested in and script answers to them.
Yeah. There are certain, things that you can prepare for. And one of them I have is create a list of your skill set and examples on how you have applied those skill set in a real world situation.
Yeah, people make spreadsheets, Word docs, whatever you need to be able to have potential questions and the responses to those questions. And you script those and you practice those until they become fluid, and practice them out loud. You can practice them in a mirror. You can record yourself. You can have a support person do a mock interview with you until those answers become a little more fluid for you. And if they sort of mix up how that question is asked, variations of that question, that will also be helpful. Recording yourself is also really good for you to be able to look back at your body language. Okay. And I understand that these are a lot of things to have to think about in the moment. So being able to have scripted answers takes some pressure off of having to think in the moment. I understand that there is the potential for questions that you are not scripted for, and that's okay. You consider that practice for the next interview if you didn't get it on that shot.
Yep. Body language is one of mine, and your tone, your language tone. Yeah. Both are very important in how they reflect on as the potential employee.
I tend to be fairly animated when I speak now, but I was not when I was younger. And that came through practice when my youngest son, Peter, who's level 3 non-speaking, he was in speech therapy. And the speech therapist said, when you're speaking to him, I would like you to have a bigger affect, have more expression, to engage with him. So that's what I did. And now I just do it all the time. But that was not that was not how I was wired to actually communicate. Was not very animated and expressive. Now it is. We're also going to have the problem with open-ended questions. So how do we get around that? Tell me about yourself. Again, you can script this beforehand. What they're really asking you for is, what is it about you that would make you a good fit for this job? And if you sort of have that in mind for all of the questions and try to circle back to having an answer for that, that's really what they're looking for.
And answering all of those questions is going to be dependent on one of the strategies that I have is research the company that you're applying to. Understand who they are, what it is that they're offering, and tie those back into, those answers that you were saying as one of the strategies. Is how do you tie it back to yourself? By researching what that company is and how it's going to make you a good fit for that company.
Yeah, you're trying to sell yourself as the ideal candidate for that position. So learning their company mission statement and a little bit of their history. You're right. That is going to help you answer those questions in a way that checks their boxes that they're looking for. Also, write a list of things that you are good at.
Yep.
If you're very well organized, work that answer into the question.
Yep, that's, like I said, create a list of your skill sets.
Yeah, detail-oriented. If you like planning things out or learning or making systems more efficient, they're all transferable skills. One caveat to that, don't be overly honest. I'm not asking you necessarily to outright lie. But I find that there is an autistic need to answer questions accurately, which is also honestly and often succinctly. So if they ask you a question like, how do you handle conflict resolution? You don't need to say, I've never had to handle conflict resolution. That's not a good answer for that question. But what you could say is how you would handle it. So you don't stop there and say, oh, I've never had to do that. Say, well, I've not had to exercise those skills in my previous job. However, if, maybe have a scenario written, keeping that job description in mind about how that might
Look like.
what that might look like in the future. So if it did come up, because they're not expecting you to know everything. There is job training involved. What they want to know is that you're able to take on that learning. They want to know that you're able to handle the things that are going to be thrown at you, because training an individual is the most expensive part for an employer.
And giving examples through with all of the questions that they're going to propose to you is a great way of showing that skill set.
Yeah. So if they ask you something like, do you have experience in point of sale software, like the specific one that we use, and you don't, you can say, no, but I've used similar software. Or you can say, so that you have an understanding of the basics, or say something like, I'm a fast learner and I'm looking forward to developing my skills in that area. They want you to be interested and motivated. So it doesn't matter that you don't have that particular skill. That's a trainable skill.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, hey, I don't, but I'm a fast learner and I'd really like to learn about that. That still checks a box for them.
Yep, I agree.
They don't want to waste their time. Employees are an investment. They want someone who's reliable and eager to work.
And that is a opportunity for you to bring that skill set as being an autistic person to the forefront without telling them that you're an autistic person.
I do understand that none of this really seems fair, because what I'm really asking people to do is to mask all of your autistic traits in order to get hired. That's what I'm asking you to do.
Yep. I hear you. Yep. I hear you. And that's sad. And it comes back down to my earlier rant of, proactive and reactive.
If you think that the organization that you're applying for may be receptive, you can ask for interview accommodations. You can tell them you have a diagnosis. You can get a quiet room. You can get interview questions in advance. I'm telling you, that's not the way the world works right now.
Mm-mm.
So that is probably not going to get you a job. So you're going to have to mask through the interview process in order to get the job.
There's also another avenue in which you can practice these skills is by working with a recruiter. And your recruiter is working in your best interest. And therefore, telling them your diagnosis is going to be to your best advantage. And asking them to run you through different situations and scenarios that allows you to practice those skill sets in environments that where your sensory needs are going to be really challenged. For example, you had mentioned that the perfume, right? Have your recruiter sit and have bright lights and perfume sprayed lightly so that you're able to come into a situation and have to deal with both of those, but it is in a safe environment where your recruiter is there to help you through the process and through the challenges of the sensory needs that are around you.
That's not going to work for everybody. Sometimes our sensory sensitivities are just so high that you're not going to desensitize yourself to those things. It's just not going to happen.
That may not be possible, ever be possible, but it's going to give you that advantage on being able to go and enter an environment to get the job. So this is one of the strategies that are out there in regards to that.
I've maybe should have started with this one, but there's one more point that I think is really important for autistic people to know, and that is that you don't necessarily have to have all of the listed job requirements to get the job, which seems so stupid. But if the ideal candidate will have 3+ years of experience, you might not actually need that in order to get the job. And every autistic person is listening saying, then why are they putting that down there if it's not necessary? I don't know. I don't know if it's a drop-down menu. Neurotypical people ask for things all the time that they don't necessarily mean. It doesn't make sense to me either. I don't have an answer for why they do that, but I do know that you do not necessarily have to have all of the requirements in order to get the job. It's still okay to apply.
Yep.
And again, even if you don't get the job, look at it as practice for the next interview. It's never going to be easy, but certain aspects of it will get easier with practice.
Yes. So there is an abbreviation that's called STAR, and in order to, as a tip in through interviewing processes, and it's a formula that's it's made easy and helps you structure your answers to the questions. So when it says S is for situation, provide context and explain the situation when a question is asked. A task, explain what your role was in that situation. The action, the steps that you took to address that situation, and the result in which the final outcome was. So if you provide this, we will put this on our link. If people, want to refer to it, that's great. And it helps you through the interview process.
I don't think I understood any of that.
Okay. All right. I'm so sorry.
Well, the first one is situation. I don't know how to apply that to a question. What
a lot of times when you're in an interview, they ask for, give me an example of a situation that this occurred, whatever the situation that they're going to give you.
Okay.
And they would like you to answer that, right? So you're going to provide the context and explain what the situation was, right? What your role was in the situation, the action that occurred in the situation, and what the results were of the situation.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Good?
Okay, yeah.
Yep. All right. So it's called the STAR.
Okay.
We could put that in just in case. One of the last points, I don't know if you have this on your list, is actually dressing for the interview.
No, it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is also a thing.
Yes. Yeah. I love Alex. He is one of my most favorite person. But if he showed up to an interview with his fire red hat, and that would be questionable.
I don't know if we've mentioned it in this episode, but Alex is my oldest son. He's level 1, so he has lower support needs. He has flair. What can I say?
And he can pull it off. Okay, he has flair, and he is one of those people that can pull off that extent of flair.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the job that you're applying for.
Yes. So, for instance, if you're applying for a job such as an educational assistant, where you're working with special needs students with the multiple exceptionalities, don't go to a job interview in high heels, because people want to know that you're going to dress for the job that you're going to be in. So wear shoes that are going to be allow you to run after a student, that are going to, your slips and trips. They do gauge you on that. So please prepare for the interview and look at your outfit and put it together before you go.
Okay, that can be difficult. So I think what I would have to do is I would have to Google, what should I wear for an interview for this job? Mm-hmm. Because I just wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, but you can't take it literally at the same time, because I wouldn't go, if I'm applying for a job at a doctor's office, I wouldn't go in my scrubs. No,
but I think if you Googled what should I wear to the interview, it's not going to tell you to wear scrubs.
Yes, you hope not. So,
well, I don't know. I haven't done it.
Yeah, maybe we should and see what it does. But yeah, dress for the part, please.
Yeah, I just find clothing is exceptionally difficult. So I wouldn't be applying to a job that I had to wear a suit to every day. I couldn't do it. I couldn't wear that every day, so it's not a job for me.
Yeah, but if you know that you're going to have to wear a suit or a certain particular outfit to a job, but certain materials are uncomfortable for you, by Googling and researching this ahead of time allows you to go and select items of clothing that meet the criteria for this position, but also meet your sensory needs.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I was not thinking about clothing, but yeah, your presentation of yourself is going to matter.
Yeah. So that was it on my to-do list. I hope that this is helpful to people, and more importantly, that They know that they're not alone on this.
I think the next question that I'm sure that people have is, say I go out and I get the job. I've masked throughout the interview, done a stellar job, I get the job. How do I keep the job? I can't mask forever.
No, I think ongoing training and ongoing work is really crucial, and that applies for everybody. But I think that's a great opportunity for us to discuss that in our next episode on how you go about keeping your job and keeping without totally depleting your energy.
I was distracted by the dog sneezes.
Okay.
It's okay.
Alrighty. Till then, have a great day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.